to the Marina Skua podcast. My name's Marina, I'm a knitwear designer, yarn and fibre dyer, and I love crafts, especially ones using natural fibres. So today I'm going to be talking about some of the many projects I've got going on at the moment. There's lots of stuff I'm really excited about. I think with the changing of the seasons, September arrived and suddenly it felt like autumn. We went from blazing heat to everything is rain, and it feels really nice. It's really inspiring, and it feels like for the first time in possibly a few years we've had a good summer. In terms of people who like sunshine, it was a good summer, and now I am just ready for autumn and all of the crafts that brings and many layers of knitwear. So I have a few things to talk about, a couple of finished things and then a couple of things I've got in progress. I will talk about the finished things first because I'm wearing a few of them. So cardigan is my Galdor cardigan. This one is in woolly mammoth fibres. These are all limited edition undyed yarns. So we've got blue texel, Dorset, I can't remember if it's Dorset horn or Dorset down, but the creamy white is one of the Dorsets. And then the contrast in the colourwork and the facing is Jacob. It's similar to the blue texel, it's just very slightly darker. You can see it a bit better on the facing there. And of course, if you want to make it yourself, the pattern is available, and you can use 2 or 3 colours as you prefer. You can do the colourwork in the same colour as the main colour, or you can swap it out for something with a little bit more contrast. I tend to get loads of wear for this one in the warmer months and in transitional weather because it's so easy to take off and on, because there's no fastening on the front. It's got nice deep armholes and the shorter sleeves. Just kind of, you don't have to worry about shimmying in and out of tight sleeves and things. It's great. And it just layers up really nicely with things. And then underneath I have my scrumper waistcoat. It's not quite warm enough to be wearing it on its own, although it does look super cute with the skirt that I'm going to show you in a second. This one is a version I made in yarn from my friend Kat Weaver. She gave me some yarn that she had spun up from local fleeces to her over in Hertfordshire, and I dyed them with woad seeds from my old garden, which gave this really nice olive green. And yes, scrumper waistcoat. It was originally designed in Appledore yarn by John Urban Textiles, the DK version, and I love that one too. And then I have a skirt, and I'm going to need to address something. So I'm wearing a skirt, and it's kind of got to the point where we can't really disguise the reason I needed a new skirt. Having a baby, I have put off mentioning it publicly because I don't like to talk about my personal life that much. But it's at the point where I can't show you anything I'm wearing without it being very, very apparent. So it's also informing a lot of my making choices. So this one, I will try and put in some longer shots of it so that you can see the whole thing. It's a Bramble skirt, which is not really a pattern, but a design and tutorial by my lovely friend Lorna of Thread and Yarn. She has a lovely YouTube channel and both designs knitwear and sewing patterns, and is also an excellent natural dyer. And this skirt she has there's a video tutorial on YouTube and also some written instructions that are on a pay what you can type system. And I went fabric shopping with Lorna at Organic Textile Company a few weeks ago, and this fabric is one of the ones I chose. And I wasn't expecting to make a bramble skirt. I thought I was going to make some kind of skirt, but I thought I was probably going to do something fairly plain and rectangular. And then when I got home, I realised that a bramble skirt would be an ideal thing to do. And it's just a lovely pattern. Usually, when following a series of instructions like that, I would follow written instructions, but I actually made this skirt yesterday after I had all the pieces cut out from a previous day. I had a little sewing session with the small boy and it was really fun. I can't really get longer projects done while he's around because, you know, 3-year-olds and attention spans. But it was great. He spent quite a while dispensing and then re-putting in pot of pins. And yeah, then he was just playing with all my sewing stuff and really enjoyed the sewing machine. And the reason I mention this is that we ended up following the video tutorial rather than the written instructions because it meant that every so often we could check in and say, let's see what Lorna's going to tell us to do next. And he really enjoyed that. And so it was some sneaky screen time, but it was a really nice thing to do together, where craft activities are usually very short and sharp. So yes, I needed an elasticated waist. So this one's super comfy. I am accepting the fact that probably in about a year's time I'm going to have to unpick the back of the waist and probably reduce the width of the elastic a bit because already quite big, and I wanted it to be comfy. Waistbands are getting incredibly uncomfortable for me. Fundamentally we have pockets, nice inseam pockets, and the written instructions that Lorna's provided give a pattern piece for the pocket. The rest of it is all rectangles that you can adapt to your body and the fabric that you have. And so this ended up being not quite zero waste because the pockets are an irregular shape, but the little cutouts around the pockets were the only waste fabric from this, which is really pleasing. And that's a tiny little handful of scraps that can probably go in the compost or something. So it's organic cotton fabric. It's a cross weave. It's actually, if I show you the inside here, it's actually a dotty fabric that has a print on it. I don't really go for dots in terms of fabrics I like. And it was on sale because there was a fault in the fabric in that the dots in places are like slightly off kilter. And so I got quite a good deal on the fabric considering I wasn't planning on using the dots anyway and wanted to use the reverse of the fabric. So yes, very, very pleased with this. I suspect I will be wearing it a lot. There are instructions in the pattern for optional tucks near the bottom, on the bottom tier, and I went for 3 tucks. And I really like the sort of little extra detail they give on that. And I think on a pattern fabric probably wouldn't be necessary, but on this fabric I think they add a lovely bit of visual interest. And also I should have bought slightly more fabric, like an extra ½ meter wouldn't have gone amiss. I foolishly did not account for shrinkage when I bought the fabric and mentally judged how much I was going to need. A bit more would have been nice, but I've still got plenty of freedom of movement. I don't have the hem of the skirt like catching around my ankles or anything, or preventing me from taking the quite long strides I tend to take because I've got long legs. So yes, very, very pleased with this, and really nice to have a project that's completed in a day because that's not the case with knitting projects. So yeah, very pleased with that one. And then the other thing I finished, which is very exciting because I was checking my project on Ravelry, and it has been it's been 2 years and 1 month since I cast it on. And I have finally finished my red cardie. And I've just sewn the buttons on this morning. So the buttons are laburnum ones from Tom Dyson Woodworking, which I'm wearing the U version of on this waistcoat. I have some of Tom's buttons in stock in my shop if you're interested in those. And it's a saddle shoulder. This is a design I've come up with. It's not published yet. It will hopefully be published soon. Stay tuned for further information on that. Probably subscribe to my newsletter if you want to hear when it's out, because that's the best place to hear when stuff's happening that isn't reliant on social media algorithms and stuff. It's worked like a compound raglan from the top down seamlessly, and it's got moss stitch over the shoulders, and then the moss stitch section continues down the top of the sleeve and then turns into this nice twisty detail that's sort of halfway down the arm, so kind of sits over the shoulders, and then you cable down the rest of the forearm. And so you've got a nice tapered sleeve. And I tried this on and was honestly so pleased with the fit of the shoulders, because the shaping is fairly complex. There's a different rate of increase for front, back, shoulders, arms, and the rate changes throughout. So the pattern will come with a shaping table that's like a spreadsheet that you can print off and keep track row by row of what you're meant to be doing for your size. And I did at the beginning have to rip back most of the yoke, which I knitted this on 3.25mm needles, which is a bit of a wrench when you have to pull back quite a bit of it. But I love, let's get myself situated here. I love the fit around the shoulders here and just the upper body. I think it's turned out really nicely. So you can see how the saddle shoulder continues down there. And then I'm going to struggle I've got lots of pattern photos to take soon, and I'm going to struggle a bit with showing how things are actually meant to fit, because this is not the proportions that I usually grade for. I just love this sleeve detail, so you can see how it sits on the arm there. And I've got reasonably long sleeves on this one because I really wanted the sleeves to be kind of elegant looking. And I just love everything about how it's turned out. This really bright red is really blowing out on screen, so I hope it's going to show up okay. And I think it works nicely with these darker wood buttons. I wasn't sure if I was going to use these, but I think they've turned out nicely. I think it would also be really nice with some sort of metal, ornate, antique-y gold ones, but I don't know if that would feel a little bit festive. But yes, so the yarn I've used is Rauma Fennel, and the colour, I don't have the yarn label with me, but I believe it's 4120. It's a heathered dark red. And the yarn was a lovely gift from my friend Diana. So thank you very much, Diana. Happiness. It's lovely. And I'm hoping I'll still... I think I'm going to have to stop wearing it at some point in the next few months, but I'm hoping it'll last me a little while longer before I have to put it aside and then maybe wear next year. So yes, I need to finish off the last details on the pattern for this one, and then we'll send it off for tech editing, and then at some point this autumn it will be ready for release. So yeah, really happy with that. I haven't had a chance to wear it properly yet because, as I say, I've just sewn on the buttons, but I think I will be trying to wear that one quite a bit while I can be guaranteed that it still goes on. And actually I will be able to wear it just open and not with all the buttons closed, so we shall see. And that one, the spec of the yarn is very similar to my Mendip 4-ply, and so I might put together some kits with my Mendip 4-ply if you would like to use that as a substitute yarn, just to make it easy to select the right quantity. And yeah, and then works in progress. I am not going to show you my spinning because my spinning is the same as it has been for weeks, months, a very long time. I'm still working on my springy green feather blend. So if you want to hear about that and you haven't watched the previous videos, please feel free to go and do so. It's a longer term spin and I'm enjoying it. I'm very much enjoying the green at the moment, as I have been for most of this year, I think. So yes, spinning continues as it has been. And then knitting. I decided it was time for a new cast on. Once I just try and move slightly closer to the light here because it's chucking it down outside. Once I had finished my red cardie and loom stuff, which I will talk about in a minute, I wanted to reward myself, and so I went through my stash in a video for Patreon, where I went through and looked at lots of yarn I have, some that I had kind of forgotten about, some I had lurking in the back of my mind somewhere, and I planned a few things that I would like to make. So some things are very vague. It would be nice to put those yarns together at some point in the future. And then I came up with a couple of things that were actual projects that I wanted to cast on, and my patrons helped me decide which to cast on first. And yeah, because with my stash I have lots of, not a ridiculous amount of yarn, especially considering I do this for a living. Like, I have a couple of plastic boxes, but I don't tend to buy things with projects in mind, or if I do, then I tend to start them pretty quickly, and so they don't sit in stash for a long time. So this one is hand-spun yarn, which I spun 2 years ago, and I had originally intended it to be a cardigan, because at the time I didn't have many cardigans, whereas now I have a lot more cardigans, and so my need for cardigans is less. And so I was debating what I was going to do with it and decided that a pediment would be the way to go. Let's talk about the yarn first, then the pattern. So this one on top, you may be able to see, is slightly different. So this yarn was quite a fun, slightly sentimental spin. So when I went to Wonderwool a couple of years ago, I was vending on my own, and exhibiting on your own at shows can be like this weird whiplash of you spend all day talking to people And then if you don't have plans, suddenly you're away from home on your own, either in a tent or a hotel room, trying to work out like what to eat and what to do with the evening. And at this particular Wonderwall, I was camping. It was very, very cold, and a couple of business friends really kindly invited me along to their evening plans. And so these fibres are from John Arbon Textiles and Sealy McWheely. So I first bought a bat from Katie of Sealy McWheely, which was sort of minty green with some gold and yellow and some grey and brown and black and cream. And I did have to look out for one I liked that also didn't have sparkles in it, because Katie does like a bit of sparkle and I'm not really a sparkly kind of gal. So it was really lovely that there was one that really called to me and was sparkle free. And it was called A Flock of Sheep, which was lovely. And the colours in that were, the yellow and the green in particular, were quite vibrant. And so when that bat arrived, I took it down with me to the John Arbon Mill open weekend and picked out a couple of wool tops to ply with it. And I planned my colours quite carefully so that they would create something that still got lots of hand-spun character and interest, but also makes everything a bit more harmonious. A lot of people try to avoid spinning mud when they're spinning colours. I aim for as muddy as I can possibly get. So I chose their Devonia in Sage Sprig, which is one of their regular colours, which is just a very nice middling soft green, and a special edition that was for the Mill Open weekend that year called Down the Allotment, and the colour was Nasturtium, which was mostly green and orange with, I think, some white and grey in it. And the idea was that I would have the strand of Devonia that was just green that would carry on all the way through the yarn, helping to give that overall greenness. And then with the slightly more limited palette of the Down the Allotment top, just having the green and orange, and so like slightly less dramatic colour shifts, and the orange in context kind of reads as pink, and because it's sort of complementary to the green, it tones down a little bit so it's not so zingy and bright. And then the colours of the bat would kind of provide the visual interest and texture of little pops of colour. And I split up the bat into quite small nests. I'm going to be doing a video at some point soon on how I make my fibre nests, because it's one of my favourite ways to prepare fibre for spinning. And so by creating thin, small nests, it meant that I had shorter runs of each colour in the bat. So I was less likely to have one long section of the same thing. And so instead of, where you can get quite strong banding or gradients in hand-spun yarn, I have ended up with this kind of base sludgy green with just little bits of brighter colours popping through. And I love how it's turning out. It's just really enjoyable because the short pops of colour are enough to provide loads of interest when you're knitting. And the pairing with the pattern, where you've got stockinette on the front and back, and then these wedge-shaped sections of moss stitch that go over the hips and up the side, and they come to a point under the arm. That just, it kind of breaks up each round, and as you progress upwards, because it's worked bottom up, the moss stitch sections, which are a little bit slower, get smaller and smaller, so it feels like you're accelerating as you're going on. And it's just been completely addictive. I cast this on a couple of days ago, and I'm literally grabbing every minute I can to knit it. Oh yes, and the little ball of different colour. I've done a lot of weighing to make sure that I'm going to have enough. This is where I ran out of the nasturtium because I didn't have exactly the same amount of each fibre, and I didn't spin them exactly evenly because that's how things go with me, at least. And so I did 2 ends, so 2 plies of the sage sprig, and then 1 ply of the single that I spun from the bat. And so it's less warm looking because it doesn't have the orange that's in the rest of the yarn from the nasturtium top. And so I'm using this as the contrast for the hem, neckband and cuffs. And I have done some weighing and calculating to hopefully make sure that I will have enough for each of those, and I know how much I'm allowed to use for each section according to how many like rows and stitches there are. With this pattern, I usually in my designs make the second size because that's the size that tends to fit me. With this one I'm making the 3rd size, and I'm about 15-20 meters off what I calculate I should need for knitting it. We will see how we go. I'm expecting there to be some yarn chicken, but I am expecting to be able to finish it to, like, it might be that, I don't know, I have to have a very slightly shorter sleeve or something. We will see how we go. And I will be doing my sleeves 2 at a time, so they will just be worked in tandem, so I don't have to worry about judging how much I need for one sleeve and then the other sleeve. I pretty much always do sleeves 2 at a time because it makes my brain happy. And so, yes, and I'm hoping by going for the larger size to just have more positive ease, have it be a bit more comfy and slouchy and baggy. It's a boxy drop shoulder jumper, and I need jumpers that provide extra room around the middle. And this is the thing, like, last time I was pregnant was 2021. Things were still really quite pandemic-y. We were allowed to go out and do more things, but by the time I started getting big and was in my 3rd trimester, I basically put myself into lockdown because of health concerns and wanting to make sure that I was safe and healthy. And so I had like 3 or 4 outfits that were mostly pajamas that I wore all the time, and that was fine. But now it's like I have got bigger sooner, and I want to leave the house and do things and see people, and so suddenly I need more clothes that make me feel nice. So there is a bit of that going on with my wardrobe at the moment, and I'm also very specifically not just making maternity things because I hate the idea of just having clothes that you can wear for one very short period of life and then you're done with them. I feel the same about Christmas jumpers. So I am making things that I will wear in my future life when I am no longer this shape, and that can serve dual purpose. Because that's how I like to approach my wardrobe. I like to get as much use out of everything as I can. So this one will be a big slouchy comfy hug of a jumper in yarn that makes me happy, made from fibres that made me happy. And we will see, but I expect to be finished with this one in much less time than the red cardie took me. The red cardie is not that I didn't enjoy the red cardie, it's just it was a design project that required a lot of brain work, and every time I had other design projects on, that one got put to the back of the queue because it didn't have a deadline attached to it and other things did. So yeah, but this one is, I'm speeding through it and I'm hoping to allow myself some me knitting time around lots of other worky things. And then the other thing that I am working on, I probably have more things in the works somewhere that I've neglected to remember, but the big one that is taking up brain space is the project I have on the loom, which I talked about planning in, I think, the last couple of videos, but is finally going from the it's just in my head to it's a thing in the real world stage. And so I am weaving some, well, I am setting up my loom to be able to weave some herringbone fabric. This is ambitious. The only thing I have woven on this loom previously is a sampler scarf with variants on twill. It was about this wide. Again, if you go back to my previous podcast episode, if you haven't seen it already, you can see the scarf I made there. And that was with much heavier yarn. It was mostly kind of sport to DK weight and narrow width and not a huge warp length. It was like scarf length. This project is very fine yarn. For the weavers amongst you, I'm working at 26 EPI with 836 ends, I believe. So that's 836 warp threads. It's very fine yarn. It's effectively a lace weight in knitting terms. It's probably on the lighter end of lace weight. It's a grey lamb's wool, which I have just here. And so yes, so I will be weaving with this as the weft. I've got a couple more skeins back there. And so herringbone with these two yarns I think is going to be lovely. I think that's the best this colour has showed up. It's because it's basically brown, but it's definitely a greeny brown, which is not a colour I love on its own. I tend to prefer warmer browns. I dyed it with coreopsis from my old garden, which I then modified with iron as a bit of an experiment. But I think in a herringbone they're going to look really lovely together. And I think I have enough of this to weave a metre and a bit, and I've got a very long warp on there, so I should have an additional few metres, which, if everything works out with the first bit with that yarn, I will then be dyeing up some more of this yarn to use as weft for the rest of it in a different colour, and I will give further details on that down the road because it's something I'm excited about, but I don't want to count chickens and things. It's quite scary. Weaving has, I'd say, a much higher barrier to entry than things like knitting and spinning and crochet. The tools required are much more involved, and again, you can start very small and scale up. I'm at the stage where I have scaled up a fair bit, and the processes change a fair bit depending on the kind of loom you're using, and a lot of different stuff. So this one is ambitious. We will see how we go. I next need to thread my heddles, so that means threading the yarn through the bits of cord that are on the harnesses here. And I need to thread those in a specific order so that when each shaft raises or lowers, it creates the weaving pattern that I want it to, which in this case is a herringbone. And that's going to take a long time, and so I haven't got round to it yet, because it's something that, like, with certain long tedious tasks I can just have a video on and zone out a bit, but with that I know it's going to be long and tedious, but also I need to concentrate, and so I need to set aside a good chunk of proper concentrate-y time where I don't have a small boy asking me what everything is and why I'm doing everything I'm doing, which I have not had that time so far. I did enjoy, when I was winding the warp, I used a tip from Engineering Knits, whose videos I've been quite enjoying recently. She went on a weaving course at a weaving school in the States. I think it's the Newbury School of Weaving, and they use very old, like, antique looms from like 17 and 1800s, and she shared some tips from how weaving was done historically, about winding your warp with multiple threads. And so fortunately I had a few cones of this, and I set them up in my milk bottle basket, and so wound 4 threads at once rather than just doing one at once and going back and forth 836 times. It took a quarter of the time it would have done had I done them individually, and that was quite pleasing. It took a little while to work out, like, how I needed to move my hands to ensure that, like, everything would wind off smoothly and not get caught, and I ended up having to stick bits of tape on the catchy bits of the basket. But that was good, it was pleasing, it was nice that that sped things up a little bit. And so I've got the warp on the loom, need to thread it up next, and we will see how that goes. So the final thing I want to talk about is something I've been meaning to do for a very long time. I haven't done it previously this year because by the time I actually had time to do it, it was hot, and I don't want to release knitting patterns for chilly weather when it's hot, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. Sorry to Southern Hemisphere people, I know that you are there. I had a couple of comments about this. I work to a Northern Hemisphere schedule, and my parents live in the Southern Hemisphere. I obviously acknowledge that people in the Southern Hemisphere also make things and are doing things not in sync with how I'm doing things, but the vast majority of my audience are in the Northern Hemisphere, and that's when I'm doing things. So yes. So I've been waiting for autumn, and I shuffle across here. This is my West Country collection. It is if you've been around a while, you might have seen it before, you might have seen the video I did about it last year, so I'm not going to go into it in massive detail. I will put a link to the video I did about the collection when I released the whole thing. So up to this point, these 5 patterns have been available as a collection, and I have now released the patterns individually, so you can get them as one-offs. So if you just want to make the cardie, you are welcome to do so. So I will quickly show you. We'll start with the hat because you can't see it there. This is the hedge and wall hat. So the idea behind this collection is that I used only local yarns from the southwest of England. They are all undyed, they are all grown on farms in the southwest and processed in the southwest. And I visited the farms to take inspiration for the patterns. So hedge and wall hat has some herringbone detail on here, which doesn't show up as much as it might because it's felted. It's intended to be very, very weatherproof and to keep you really warm and to keep your head dry. You can also wear it with the brim tucked up if you like a bit more of a, well, less of a slouchy vibe. I think this is super cute, and it means your forehead doesn't get too hot if you're out walking or something. Yeah, but if you're wearing it folded down, this bit kind of protrudes a tiny bit and so kind of acts as a brim so rain doesn't get in your eyes as much. And the yarn is from Lower Hampton Farm, or homegrown at Hampton, and the vibes of this was inspired by the fact that it was raining quite a bit when I went to see them. Then the Lichenstone scarf, oh there goes the hat. This one is in broken rib. It's got pointy bits on the end, which just give it like a bit of interest and dynamism, I guess. Because I think just a plain rectangular scarf, if you don't have any fringe or anything on the end, it can look a bit awkward and just quite blunt. And so the ends on this just come to a little point there. And it's a very simple broken rib. And you can change, the pattern is written so you can change the width of it, you can change the length of it, you can make it really wide and make it into a big old parallelogram. Which I kind of want to do and turn it into a shawl, make another version. So the yarn is Rum and Raisin from Raw Wool Company, which is a limited edition one that they do batches of, and I don't think they have any right now, but it would also work really nicely in their Pure Wensleydale yarns, or any of their others, to be honest. Then mittens. Which hand are we doing? Flock Flight mitts. These are with yarn from Beck at the Woven Briar, from her little flock. Well, the Portland, which is the white, is from her flock, and then the grey is Jacob's from a flock nearby that she knows the farmer of. And they were both spun up at the same mill, at Rampersham Mill. I wanted them to be long and protective and practical. So you've got foldable little finger cuff things so that you can use your hands while you're wearing them. The whole collection is unisex and intended to be worn outside, not just for like being, but for doing as well. So they're intended to all be practical. And yeah, bits of corrugated rib, colour work that's different on the backs and fronts of the hands. And I love these, I really do. They are so cozy, and the cuffs are folded double, so they're not corrugated rib on the inside, just plain rib. So when you're making these, they end up just being like a really weird long segmented tube that you then put a thumb on. They're quite comical looking as you're knitting them, but really enjoyable. And then I take this off so you'll be able to see the tank. We've got the cardie. This is the Valley Roofs cardie. I wear this one quite a lot because, again, super comfy and practical. We've got really nice cables down the sleeves, and it's a saddle shoulder, so it goes from the neck right down over the shoulder and down. We've got the same cable on the pocket, and a little shawl collar, which you could make more generous if you wanted to, just by doing more rows, and contrast all the way around all of the edges, and then on the pockets as well. And again, the contrast colour is optional, but I just I love this warm beigey brown, but also couldn't resist a bit of this charcoal grey, and so I just wanted a touch of that grey around the edges. So the yarn for this one is from Gullet Farm down in Devon. It's a very nice one because the farm is literally a few minutes from my grandma's house, so I've been there a couple of times to visit, and yeah, it's a really nice cozy one. So whistle stop tour of those patterns. I will again link the video I made about them when I released the collection so that you can see in a bit more detail if you haven't seen that already. And the patterns are now on my website and Ravelry, and you can use the code from this land, all in capital letters, for the next week to get 25% off those patterns, and also the whole collection if you just want all of them, because the price for the whole collection is quite a bit less than buying each of the patterns individually. So if you just want one pattern, probably get that one, but if you want more than one, then probably just get the whole collection, because yeah. And so each of the patterns includes a bit of the story and the background of the yarn, as well as just the pattern, because the idea is to highlight local, sustainable, responsible yarn production, as well as to make pretty designs. So yeah, I think... Oh no, we haven't done this one, good lord. Tree hay. You can see most of it. If I lean it a bit, can I do that? Oh lord, no. Let's take it off, go on. Tank colour work. 3 colours. You could do it with 2 if you wanted to. You could use the same contrast colour for the edgings and the colour work. It's got a bit of a crease in it, that's rather bad of me. So I have, again, it's boxy, so no side shaping. We do have some shaping on the armholes, so if you can see, the arm bands are wider at the top, narrower at the bottom, and the same goes for the neck. It comes down to a little taper down at the bottom of the V. That is optional. There are instructions for both the tapered version and also just a straight band. And then this one has a split hem here, and again there are instructions for the split hem and just for a standard round hem if you prefer that. It's steeked because I love a bit of steeking. And the yarn for this one is from Gutchpool Farm, which is where I did the photo shoot for the collection, because it is, of all of the farms, it's the nearest one to me. It's about 15 minutes drive away, and so I've been down there a few times as well. And this is lovely Shetland for the contrast colours, and then Dorset Down for the cream. But they also have quite a few pretty dyed colours as well. Hopefully that stays. So yes, a whistle stop tour of those patterns, what I'm up to at the moment. So yes, big life stuff impending. I shall be talking a little bit more about that in the future as to how it's going to affect worky stuff, because it inevitably will. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and it's been very nice to chat about what I'm doing. It feels like I have actually new things to show you, which is nice, because I have spent quite a bit of time just working on the same projects for a long time. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear if you like the sound of any of those patterns, if you have any plans to knit them, or what you're excited about making this autumn or spring if you're going into spring. So yeah, if you want to keep up with what I'm doing in between videos, you can subscribe to my newsletter, follow me on Instagram, and you get lots of bonus content if you join my Patreon, and it also helps to support this channel. And I really appreciate everyone there. So thanks for joining me, and until next time, bye bye.